All right, today I'm having a little trouble accessing the online book, so I'm going to the Interactive Student Edition. This is lesson 6-6. For the equations below, decide where to place the decimal point in each quotient. Explain your reasoning for one of the equations. Solve these problems any way you choose. So you can use reasoning and number sense to help you solve the problem. If we're going to divide you want to take a look at some of your strategies for rounding, and that will help you here. So if we're going to divide 16 divided by 0.5, which is a half, how many halves are in the whole number 16? Well, you know there's two halves in the number 1, so there's going to be 16 times 2, which will be like 32 halves. So our decimal is going to go between the 1 and the 5 there. The next number, we have 35. We can round 1.2 to 1. 35 divided by 1 is around 35. So we would put our decimal after the 29. And 0.4 divided by 0.32, we have less than 1 divided by something less than 1. So we know our answer is going to be very small. So for this one, we can have 4/10, which is about a half, and we divide it by 32/10, which is about a third. What's 1/2 divided into thirds? It's going to be a number that will be, well, for this one, little preview here, 1/2 divided by thirds would be 3/2, which equals 1.1.5. So we're going to have, our answer is going to be, the decimal will be right after the 1. So let's move on. Explain how you can use number sense to place the decimal in the equation below. So 163.8 divided by how many groups of 5.2 can we get out of there? If we have, let's say 150, I'm using compatible numbers, divided by 5, my answer is going to be around 30. So the decimal point will probably go right after the 1. Okay. Moving ahead. How can you use number sense for decimal division? So remember, we are using those strategies of compatible numbers to help us solve this. How many quarters are in $15.50? The decimal point is missing in the quotient of the equation below. Use number sense to place the decimal point in the correct position. $15.50 divided by a quarter, which is shown as 0.25 using a decimal. How many quarters would that be? So you know that 15 divided by 1, 15.50 divided by 1 is 15.50. Since 25 is less than 1, the quotient is going to be greater than 15.50. And I like this strategy. Since there are 4 quarters in $1, you can say how many quarters would be in $15. So I would say 4 times 15 equals 60. So our answer is going to be at the 60. Our decimal is going to be placed after the 62. Where would you place the decimal point in the equation below? There's another problem for you there. We have 1.2 divided by 2.5. You know that 1.2 divided by 1.2 would equal the whole number 1. Since the divisor 2.5 is greater than the dividend 1.2, you know that the quotient will be less than 1. Since 1.2 is about half of 2.5, the quotient will be close to 0.5. So tricky stuff, I know. So the decimal point is going to be before the 4. So when you think about what you're logically doing, you're saying, I have, which is what your dividend is, or divisor is. I have 1.2 dividend. I have 1.2, and I want to see how many 2.5s can I get out of there. Well, you can't get any. So you're going to get about half of 2.5, and 0.48 is about half. Malcolm says that 3.9 divided by 0.52 is about 2. Corey says the quotient is about 8. Who is correct? Explain your reasoning. So if we use our compatible numbers, and we're going to say 4 divided by 0.5, which is equal to 1/2. How many halves are there in 4? Well, if I have 4 objects and I divide them all into halves, how many halves do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Corey's going to be right. The answer is going to be about 8. Remember, the first value, your dividend, is what you have. The divisor is how many equal groups you want to make. So if you want to know how many halves there are in the whole number 4, that's why I use this little drawing to demonstrate. Let's keep going a little bit here. If the dividend is 2.63 and the divisor is less than 1, what can you say about the quotient? So if the dividend is 2.63 and the divisor is going to be, we want the divisor to be less than 1. So let's put a number in there. Let's round this to the whole number 3, and we'll make the divisor, let's make it a half. How many halves are there in 3? And this is similar to the problem that we just did. So we know if we do this one, we're going to say we have 6. So what can you tell us about the quotient? You know that the quotient is going to be greater. The quotient is going to be greater than the dividend, because you're dividing it into groups that are smaller than a whole. So you're going to have a lot of groups. Lena found that 1.44 divided by 1.2 equals 0.12. Did she put the decimal in the correct place? Let's see. 1.44 divided into groups of 1.2. So think about it. If I'm dividing it into groups that have 1.2 in them. So my answer should be, if I look at my dividend, that's 1.44, I know that I'm going to have at least one group. I can get at least one group. I can get at least one group. And I'll have 24 left over, 0.24 left over. So I can get at least one group of 1.20. So my answer is going to be greater than 1. So my decimal is going to have to go after the 1. For number 3, I'm using number sense again. I'm going to do a little compatible numbers. How about 8 divided by what do I have there? 8 divided by 2 is going to equal 4. So my decimal will go after the 5, not after the 51 or at the end or at the beginning. 265.5 divided by 2.5. How about if I round that? I'm going to round my divisor to 3, and I will round my dividend to a multiple of 3. So I know 240 divided by 3 is going to be equal to 80. So where would I put my decimal? That it would be closest to 80. If I put it after the 1, let me write this big over here. If I put it after the 1, that's not close to 80, so that's not a good spot. If I put it after the 10, that's not close to 80. That's not a good spot. So I want to put it after the 2, because 102 is closer to 80. So it's going to go after the 2. Number 5, remember I want to take the divisor and I'm going to round that first, and then I'm going to take a look at the dividend and look for a compatible number that goes into 4. So I'm thinking 1200. So 3 divided by 1200. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Bring over my 2 zeros. So my answer is going to go after the 6 because 296 is close to 300. And for my last one, round that to 1 and that to 1. So my answer should be around a 1. Oops, wait a minute. That's a 100. So my answer needs to be around a 100. There we go. So my answer will be at the 100. All right. And so move down a little bit. See if I can. I'm in that student book, and this is a little different here. Hang on. Okay. So we're just placing the decimal where we think it goes. And remember, you're using compatible numbers and rounding to get an idea of how many digits will be in the answer and what the answer will be near. And then you put the decimal where you think it will go. So that's today's lesson.